So, Jared, I'm going to start out with you.
hmm
When did you see your love of soccer beginning? Was it something that your parents pushed you into, just kind of like getting you moving, or was it something that you saw immediately you had an interest in?
Yeah, so I started playing football when I was 5, and ever since then, I basically loved it. And yeah, my parents didn't push me or anything. I just started with my father and playing with my older brother because he was a goalie, so I'd always shoot on him, and I just had a lot of fun with it. So
So, is soccer something that you have turned into kind of a family experience? I know that you said your older brother got started and then you kind of followed in his footsteps. Was that something that was similar with the rest of your family?
well, I just joined a local team with him, but none of my family really liked or watched soccer before that. So I kind of just started with that, and then I really liked it, and that's
Yeah,
how
for
it.
sure.
So.
When
It
did
was
you start? Oh, sorry, Tista.
sorry, I was going to say it was interesting because we were in a small town. We had moved to North Carolina to a small area named Charlotte. It's near the coast. And there was a community soccer league, and I wanted the kids to be involved in some activity. Jared was 5, Kyler was 7, and the people at the league said that they were permitted to be on the same team, which made it a lot easier for us to have them on the same group. And Jared just automatically or immediately began to love it. And we had a little goal set up, and my husband would have them, play in the backyard and then the front yard. And, eventually all 3 of my kids played, but he just gravitated towards it. And in fact, my husband tried to discourage him from soccer because that wasn't his first, love as a sport. My husband wanted them to play baseball, which is what he'd played, or, American football. And so we tried to get them into basketball, baseball, football, lacrosse. They had other experiences, but Jared just always seemed to love the soccer ball. He was always kicking it around the house, getting in trouble for knocking things down. Wherever he was, he just, when he was little, he would sleep with his soccer ball.
Yeah, I
So
still do. So.
That's precious. And then soccer is not really a sport that Americans prioritize. Did that make it difficult to prove yourself, especially looking at international opportunities?
Yeah, so like just playing here while I was here in the US playing soccer, it was difficult like getting pickup and just playing with friends around here because not everyone would play soccer then. But just looking for opportunities to try to go off into the overseas was I guess harder, but after I joined the development team and found some connections with people, I guess that's when I started to see other opportunities.
And when did you start feeling passionate about pursuing soccer by itself? I mean, like pushing everything else in your life aside and going down that road more seriously.
Yeah, so like as soon as I started, that's when I really loved it. But doing everything for soccer was probably around maybe like 11 when I got invited to camp for the West Ham United, and I saw how they train overseas and over there. I really liked the way and the style they played over there. So that's when I wanted to put it all into soccer.
And then how did your high school team see you? I mean, did you play high school sports or were you already focused on overseas opportunities?
Yeah, so I was always focused on trying to get to the higher level, but I was able to play 1 season of high school, and it was really fun playing with all the boys there. But that was pretty short, and then afterwards I went overseas, so I didn't really have much high school experience for sports.
How did your fellow high schoolers and also middle schoolers while you were trying to decide which way your life was going, how did they see you? I mean, were they having conversations with you about how you already were kind of figuring your life out? And I say that kind of jokingly because you were in middle school, but you already
Yeah,
had kind of a plan.
yeah. So most of them, I mean, most of them were excited for me and thought it was a great opportunity to just do something that most people aren't doing right now. So most of them supported me, and they just really excited with the idea of it.
And then how did that, you said that you didn't really have a conventional high school experience. How did that change the way that the last 4 years have been for you?
Um, I only had 2 years of actual high school in America, so most of it has been online abroad. But while I was here in high school, it was mostly just studying and then playing soccer afterwards. So I didn't have as much social uh, part of high school, but it was still good, I think.
And then Teesta, how did you draw the line between Jared's priorities, school, work, homework, soccer? I mean, where did you ever kind of direct him in one certain way while he was trying to juggle all of that?
Not when he was younger, especially. We were fortunate in that he's a strong student, and we always told the kids that education was the most important. They had to do well at school. That was, the biggest priority. I think it was unspoken that if he didn't make the grades, he wasn't going to be able to play, and that never ended up. We were fortunate; it never ended up being an issue with him. I think I don't think he feels that he missed out on social opportunities. Sometimes I wonder if he did, because he wasn't able to go to a prom or homecoming, or do some of the things that typically American high schoolers do get to participate in. But at the same time, he's had some wonderful experiences that many people just dream of and would never be able to, do. So I think it's evened out. I mean, we were fortunate in that we had some strong coaches, even from when he was on the community leagues, who encouraged us to, allow him to develop. And my husband especially was very, even though he didn't have that initial love for soccer, he wanted to encourage our children to do whatever they wanted. And obviously you love watching your kids do what they're passionate about, and you love seeing them excel and grow, or just develop into whoever they're going to be. And so we allowed them to have camps, and every time there were summer camps or camp opportunities from especially European clubs, we would ask if they wanted to participate. And he always wanted the soccer camps. My older son wanted the science, my younger daughter wanted the animal camps, and this one consistently soccer, whatever it was, any chance he could do or play. And we, from when he was maybe 9 or 10, we had a Brazilian coach and a Irish coach, both who said that his style was very technical, and that a couple of them say his style was different than most of the American players that they worked with or that they saw, that he was much stronger with his foot skills. And we had an opportunity with West Ham United. They have an international camp that you go to a local camp, and some children are selected. Then they went to a national camp, and he was fortunate enough to be selected to go to the international camp. And there were 18 boys from all across the world. I mean, there was a Scottish child, Australian child, Irish, and it was the first time we were really exposed to what training is like overseas in an academy environment at West Ham United, which is this huge behemoth of a club over in Europe. And we lived on Upton, the park, the grounds. We stayed there for the 10, 12 days. We were fully immersed in the experience. You got to eat there, be on the pitch. It was just a totally different exposure. It was very enlightening to see how they viewed soccer as a culture. It was through an entirely different lens than we view it here. And unfortunately, we did not have EU citizenship. And to play in the European countries, that's one of the largest barriers for many Americans. You can't play without having that EU, passport or dual citizenship. But it did allow us to kind of view what other opportunities were out there, or how other countries and culture had played and trained. And it was interesting. I kept videotaping their training sessions. They didn't focus on the same things that we focused on here. They had a lot of small-sided games. And I spoke with a gentleman named Tony Carr, who was running the club, and very well-known footballer, football manager. And he, at one point, the boys were running all over the field in every direction, bumping into each other. There was yelling, screaming. They were loving it, but it didn't look at all structured. And another parent and myself, kind of were laughing about it and saying they look like they're having a great time. And he said they deliberately tried to create organized chaos, because that was most real, or most indicative of what you would find in an actual game. You can't plan things out. You can't, decide you're going to run here, you're going to run there. It can't be structured. It needs to be chaotic. The kids need to be able to be enjoying themselves, and just, even without realizing it, be, kind of determining what they're going to do. And even subconsciously, they need to be making decisions, what path they're going to take, what are the different options that they could take, which one will they choose. And that always struck me as really interesting, this concept of organized chaos, because we don't see that as much, or I didn't feel we saw that as much in American organized sports here. It seemed to be very controlled.
Yeah, that's a really interesting aspect of the difference. Jared, can you kind of elaborate on from an inside perspective? I mean, what's the difference culturally between US club sports and playing overseas?
Yeah, the biggest difference I've noticed is the way the coaches teach the tactical side of soccer, just moving off the ball and the way you play and pass the ball within the team. And other than that, it's just the speed of play over in the other countries I've noticed significantly faster than over here. So
And is that difficult to kind of get under control? Because
yeah,
is it kind of like going from a college to a pro style or a high school to a college style where things just get super quick and
yeah,
you kind of have this phase of, oh my gosh, what the heck? And
yeah.
then you get a
First,
hang of it.
first few games I watched of the teams I was going to join play, it was super fast, and I thought, wow, this is pretty crazy. This is the highest level I've seen. But once you start playing with them, I adapted quickly. So, and you keep learning new things from the players you're playing with. So it was good just learning from that way.
And then how old were you at that point when you first got started?
I think I was 14 or 15 when I first went to Italy.
And they placed him with the men's league. Now, they've got several, tiers of soccer or football in Italy and many of these countries. So it wasn't a professional or semi-pro, but it was a men's league. So he was playing with 19 to 25-year-old young men who were hoping to break into the semi-pro club. This was when he was 15. So it was still, wonderful opportunity for him to play at a higher level.
I mean, the difference between 15 and 20 is huge though, Jared. How did you fit in or did you not fit in at that time in your life?
Yeah, I was able to fit in with the team just from my technical skills with my feet. But as far as the physicality, I was the smallest and would get pushed over like a lot during practice and training. But other than that, I really like playing against the older players and it helped me grow a lot faster.
Why do you think that is?
Just, I mean, when you play against stronger players that are better than you obviously learn a lot more. And you get stronger a lot more faster than you would at your own age. So.
And then Tista, how did you support him while he was overseas at like a barely high school age?
It was very difficult, especially at first. We had completely, as much as we could, we had vetted the program. I went with him and stayed for 2 weeks. And the gentleman who ran the program in Italy, Bruno Rodolfi, is a very well-known coach there. And he happened to be a close friend of one of the director of coaching that we had here. So I felt like there was that relationship. If there wasn't, I don't think my husband and I would have allowed Jared to go. But we felt, some measure of comfort. We gave him a catchphrase that, if anything's uncomfortable, if we ever ask, what do you want to do this weekend? Or what are you doing this weekend? If you ever say, I want to see Aunt Kathy at the beach, or I miss going, make this reference, that's our catchphrase, that something is not safe and we're going to come and get you immediately. And, I had all these visions of, I don't know what you think the worst possible scenarios come to mind. And I wanted to ensure he'd be safe, but I kind of diverted a little bit. As far as keeping in touch with him, with technology today, it's much easier than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. We had WhatsApp, which we use daily. So we were able to speak with him every day, which was wonderful. You have video conferencing. You don't always have a clear connection, which would be frustrating because oftentimes he'd have to be down the hallway.
Yeah.
Like in one corner of the building, he couldn't speak to us from the room where he was staying at the boarding school because connection wasn't, strong. But we were able to text every day. We had a group with my parents, his aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody was together in one group. Then we had a little family unit group, and I know he FaceTimed with his siblings quite often. So we tried to do whatever was possible. There's a time difference. You've got a 6-hour or 5-hour, depending on the time of year, time difference that you had to take into consideration. But we did try and, we were thinking about him all the time, and we wanted him to know that. And I would send him a memory picture every day. And
Right before she went to bed, she would send me one. So when I wake up, I just get a picture. So that was nice.
That's so cute. But let's talk more seriously about when you knew that certain club atmospheres were not right.
Yeah,
Because Tista, you alluded to some situations where Jared just didn't fit,
Right,
or the club was not a great
right,
situation for him. Can you kind
right.
of walk me through those experiences?
I was talking about the
yeah,
Madrid one.
yeah. When I went to Madrid for a trial, the way the coach would like structure the practices were different. So if we were doing a scrimmage, he would stop the play to explain something every few minutes. So you couldn't really get into the rhythm of play, which was kind of annoying, but I understood that he wanted to teach us something. But if your style doesn't really fit with the team or the coach, it's hard to show them like what skills you want to showcase when it's not what they want.
And then how did you know that the team that you ended up being with was a good fit? I mean, was it kind of immediate culturally that it just worked?
Yeah, and as soon as I joined my most recent team, kind of just fit with the team, and everyone was really nice. They really like America, and so that they thought it was exciting to try to speak English with me. And the coaches liked me, so I fit with the team pretty well right from the start.
Was
And
it
it,
difficult kind of assimilating into a totally different culture?
Yeah, it's so much different over there than in America, just everything like the living style. So I had to get used to some of the things that I'm used to from back home. But like the food and everything else was great. And then the football, of course, is what I really loved, and the level was much higher.
and talking about this, if I can cut in a moment,
For
it
sure.
was interesting to me when he initially went to boarding school in Italy at the first program, they would do their laundry, but then they would have a wringer to dry
Mm,
the clothes. So you would have this machine that you kind of ran the clothes through to wring the water out, and then he put line up on his window
yeah,
and had the windows open in the boarding school room and actually had his little clothing, hung up to dry. They had a laundry there that did some of the laundry, some of the sheets and all, but his kit and various items he'd have to wash himself. So I think that was different. Then for a short time, he played with a team, and I
Malaysia.
don't, I don't,
Malaysia.
I
Yeah,
don't want to say which team it was. It was a club, a good semi-pro club, and I think it was a phenomenal experience for him. But initially, when they placed them in apartments, he and this one other teammate,
mm,
the conditions were just very different than what they're used to. They were actually worms in the
yeah.
shower, so they would have to run
No,
water.
we just have to run the water before we got in the shower because there were like little worms all around the edges. So that was different.
The toilet had a leak in the back, so definitely conditions that we wouldn't consider remotely hygienic and not something he'd ever been
Mm,
exposed to. They had to make, he and his roommate had to make their own food. They had to go do their shopping, certainly a level of independence that he wouldn't have had here. We would have done much more for him, but they tolerated it, or they took it in stride because it was moving towards their dream, I guess.
Yeah. Jared, was that the very first time that you had ever lived without your parents for any
uh,
extended period of time?
yeah, the first time when I was 15, went to Italy, that was the first time. And they were like obviously there were other friends that for around the world that spoke English and stuff, so that was nice. But just living alone is so much different than being home with everybody, obviously.
And how does the culture change once you move overseas and you are hours and hours of time difference away from your family and you don't really speak the language?
Yeah, so the time difference, it was annoying in the morning every time I'd get up and I couldn't text them right away, but that was fine because I was lucky to be ahead of the time. So then when I went to sleep, I could write them before going to bed and everything. And culture wise, I think it just took some time getting used to. That's it.
He said in Italy, people are much more, they're louder and kind of bigger, if that makes sense. And so he would think people were arguing, and that was just the manner in which they
Yeah,
communicate.
yeah, they always sound like they're just arguing with each other or like they're mad with one another every time they're talking. So
Did you feel embraced by the Italian soccer landscape? I mean, did they take you in?
yeah, I think the first few trainings I had with them helped too because I played really well. But I think they really embrace, especially that I was from America, because they think it's so exciting what they see on movies and everything about the States. So they really welcome me and just try to talk with me and stuff. So it was pretty nice.
And
And
then, oh,
I was just thinking in Europe, a lot of the leagues have limits on how many, well, all around the world, you have limits on how many foreign players you can have. So especially when he started at the semi-pro level, he wasn't in groups where, many of these kids or young men hadn't had many foreigners or Americans around them playing. So it made him a bit of a novelty, I think. He has a clip a friend sent him, the Dutch, wasn't that young man?
Dutch. Yeah.
This gentleman was Dutch, I think just 23, 24-year-old. He was a teammate on a team that ended up going bankrupt that Jared was signing with in Spain, unfortunately. COVID, really did a number on a number of teams, but they were fascinated by the way Jared would eat peanut butter because he loves peanut butter, and he'd have the little can or the little bottle open, and he was eating it with a spoon, just going in the kitchen and eating it with a spoon. And they were laughing, typical American guy, look at him eating, who eats peanut butter with it? It was funny, and they were all kind of teasing him and laughing, and you had two men videotaping him and videotaping each other. It was, I found the clip really amusing. It was nice to see the camaraderie and kind of the fellowship almost with these young men who had this love for the sport, and they're all speaking in English with their accents, and just, it was fun. It was just a neat experience for me to kind of see, and it made us have a different level of comfort too, that at least he's with people he's kind of friends with, he's, fitting in.
And then Teesta, what would you say to parents who are looking at overseas opportunities for their children, but aren't necessarily comfortable with sending them across the ocean?
Well, and it is a difficult decision because, this is one of the most precious things you have, your children, you're entrusting their welfare someplace overseas. And there are a number of programs now that are available in a number of different countries. I think you have to vet them as well as you can. If there's an opportunity to speak to a parent or somebody, you should certainly ask, what parents have been there, and ask for referrals and take any opportunity to speak to somebody. On our site, we placed a number of links for academies and camps and tours and programs so people can get, the contacts that leads and reach out to them. I have not fully vetted all of them. The problem is the vast majority of players who go overseas are never going to play professionally. Even the large number of players here are never going to make it to that level. But I think there's so many other benefits to having an opportunity to go and train overseas. You're exposed to different cultures, you're exposed to different foods, you're immersed in a language. I think it's a much better way for you to actually learn how to speak Italian or Portuguese or Spanish or whatever language than just having, classrooms here in the US. I think there's so many benefits to being exposed to different people and different cultures. When you return to the US, perhaps it'll help you if you're aspiring to be playing college soccer. That's an entirely different conversation. But as you know, there are very few scholarships for college soccer players, and the vast majority of the larger scholarship, monies go towards foreign players. So if you're trained in Europe, it may help you get more money from that standpoint than you would as just a US trained player. I just think there's so many benefits beyond the opportunity to try and play professionally. One thing I think people don't realize, when we were looking at some of these clubs, they talk about how their players were being placed in men's leagues and getting to play. And initially, that sounds phenomenal, like you're playing in this high level team. But then we realized that, if you've got 20 tiers of soccer, if it's a men's league, it may be a men's club. And initially when Jared was 15, he happened to be placed with a group that was trying to break into the semi-pro league. So it was a men's club, but it was a strong men's team, which was very fortunate for him. But you could be placed with a men's club that's just, Sunday players or, training now and then. And it doesn't necessarily mean that there are going to be any scouts there or anybody seeing you who's going to be able to help you get to the next level. And I don't know that all the academies abroad express that well enough to the parents or share that well enough. I think there are a lot of parents, I know a number of the parents who reach out to me, talk about, well, this club or that club, and my son's being placed here or there. And they'll ask me how that compares, or, is it La Liga? It's like, no, it's not La Liga. That's top tier. And there've been a few instances in which I've tried to help them trace back to find out where that club is. And many of them are regional clubs, which are still wonderful opportunities, but you're just playing at the local level. You're not traveling. And so there's just a very different structure there. And I think a lot of parents here don't know. And again, if you're going in with the idea that your child's going to have strong training, they're going to have much better training, arguably, than they would receive here. They're going to be surrounded by boys who want the same thing. You have the support. You're going to get good education, good food, this immersion in this other culture. There's so many other benefits to it. But I tried to tell any of the parents who reach out to us that, I don't want you thinking that this is going to guarantee anything. This is not a pathway to a pro career. If you wish to play professionally, this may help you better position yourself. I might be able to help you identify things you can do to be seen or discovered. We have a free ebook on our site for building a LinkedIn profile for footballers. And Jared's been following the steps, reaching out to people. I don't know if I connected with you or if he connected with you initially on LinkedIn, but I think you've got probably 2,000 some followers now.
Yeah, just from connecting with people.
He's got more followers than I do on LinkedIn. And just from following, a formula, and not that everybody is going to respond or be a connection that might be able to assist you, but it's still good, I think, whatever you're going to do to start building that professional connection or network from a young age. And whatever you decide to do in soccer, if you go into coaching or directing a club, or if you're still working with football in some capacity, I think it's going to be beneficial for players to have a network built.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I love LinkedIn. I think it was you, Teesta, that
Okay.
I think we made the initial connection, and
Okay.
then you kind of pitched me, Jared. You're like, my son's really cool. Can we bring him on? So, Jared, can you give me a timeline of the teams that you have played for?
Mm-hmm. So I started playing obviously in America with just a developmental team, and then I went to Italy. So I played there for a year and then came back home so that my siblings and I could be in high school for a year together. And so I played high school and for a club here for just that 1 year. And then I went to Spain for 2 years with an academy over there. And after that, I went to Italy, and that's where I am now.
And the Spanish Academy was one of the pay-for-play academies. It was a program that was designed to develop players. So it wasn't a Spanish, club academy. It was this gentleman who's created it has his own teams. He's got 2 teams that are working themselves up. I think they're this first and second level of regional play now. And one thing that was good about Jared being there was being in the country allowed him to attend a couple of trials, and that's how he joined what's called a Division Day Honor Group. They have these top tier, I guess, of juvenile players, 18 and under, and many of the top teams will look at this group of players to, kind of choose their players from. And he was able to get a trial with one of these, he and a friend of his, because they were already in Spain. So that was definitely good for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the exposure that you've had at such a young age is really impressive. Does it ever get overwhelming that you are not on a quote unquote traditional path?
Not for me, just because I know what like my dream is to play at the top level. So I know it's going to be different than the normal path.
How old are you now?
I'm 19 now.
19. I think that's what Teesta had said, but I just wanted to clarify. And then, Jared, you have played in a couple different countries in Europe that are not necessarily known for stellar mental health services.
Mm.
How has the difference occurred between the countries that you've played in and athletes seeking mental health services?
So mental health wise, they don't really teach it, but over there in the countries in Europe, I've noticed just it's a more togetherness within the team. So everybody kind of pumps each other up. And so their mentality is obviously to win, but they want to do it for each other. So you don't have as much pressure. But it's just different over there. They don't really teach, like I said, the mental health side. You kind of have to do it on your own.
Well, and we were told at the one of the academies he had joined that they had a psychologist on staff, or they were who was going to be teaching how to stay focused. And, because so many young players do get their confidence shaken. And, I feel like Jared went through a phase where his confidence was shaken for a while. I think some of the players who are very strong at a young age begin to put a great deal of pressure on themselves. They feel as if the team is depending on them, and it almost causes them to freeze as a result, because they put so much they internalize a lot of this, or they'll fall into the situation where they'll perhaps lose a ball or have a bad mood or a bad shot, and they can't get beyond that. They're just thinking about what they messed up instead of moving forward. And we'd reached out to a couple people here to help Jared kind of learn some tools or techniques so he could overcome that.
Mhm.
And then were they sports psychologists or were they therapists? I mean, how did sport play into that kind of outreach?
They were sports psychologists, so they kind of helped me with confidence and how to be in the moment, because mentality is such a big part of your performance now, that it's so important that you just believe in yourself and are able to like move past mistakes you do. So that's what I've been trying to, it's like your brain is like a muscle, so just trying to improve like that. Just keep learning new things to get stronger.
And then when you say that there weren't really conversations within the locker rooms about athlete mental health, were there people on staff within those overseas clubs that were put in place to help in the situation that something went haywire, or were you really just handling it by yourself?
Yeah, from the teams I've been with, you just have to handle it by yourself. They have like trainers for injuries, but they don't really have psychologists or anything for mental side.
And did you ever have a talk with any teammates about that being an issue? I mean, were your teammates candid about struggles with focus or competition or preparation?
Yeah, especially in the academy I was with in Spain, I had a few friends who struggled with just doubting themselves. So we kind of talked together to try to work on that, but it's just everyone has a different way to just gain confidence. So we kind of try to figure it out by ourselves, but also help each other.
So how do you build your confidence?
Yeah, there was definitely a time, like my mom said, where I struggled a lot with it, but you just there's exercises you can do. Like I meditate now, and I try to learn for some of the athletes in different sports what they do to improve their confidence. So I think mine's a lot better now.
And then how do you, as a youth player, begin to view the world as your stage instead of just the United States? I mean, you got started incredibly early, what I would consider incredibly early. Are players that start that early starting too soon?
I don't think so, but I guess it's different for everybody, whatever their opinion they have. But I think the earlier you start, the faster you can get better and the more you learn. So I'm glad I did.
And it's interesting too that here in the US, if you look at MLS, they have the pro combine for MLS where they're looking at college graduates, and they look at a lot of players from overseas, to kind of to build the MLS. And that's changing. It seems that we're getting more and more Americans into the MLS ranks now than a few years ago. But in Europe, if you're not with the top academy or being looked at by the time you're 17, 18, 19, it's almost too late. They don't traditionally go to college and then look for a career in professional soccer. Normally after high school or during high school, you'd be moving into that. I've heard several scouts or agents say that by 22, 23, if you're not with, a top team or signed with a team that's has you maybe loaned out to a lower level club, so you're at least getting playing time, you're not going to make it in the top tiers or professionally in Europe.
So then how can Americans who may be playing at a Division 1 level or even D2 or D3 make a name for themselves on an international stage if they already are kind of behind by that age?
Well, there are many companies that offer what they call combines. That's a situation where you'll have, and it's interesting you bring that up, because one of the things that I'm now working on, I pulled my husband, who's a businessman, into this. We're in communications with a couple groups abroad who are going to work together on bringing some of their combines here. It's similar to a traditional American football combine, in which you have a group of players together. They'll do small-sided games, some touch.
Oh no, Teesta. I think I lost you. Hello? I lost your signal. Oh no. Come back. Oh no.
I need to get your phone number.
Yes, absolutely. So let's kind of pick up where we left off. We were talking about the difference between club styles in the US versus overseas, and the difference that being 15 versus 20 makes on the atmosphere.
Yeah, the biggest difference I said compared to US is the way they play, like the speed of play they play at, and the tactical side. So how they move off the ball and how they move for each other to support each other as teammates. And then when I was 15 playing against older players, I think it was just the physicality side of it, which was harder for me to compete with other players because they were so much bigger. But other than that, I really liked playing with them.
And he was always one of the smallest players. He was in the 20th percentile for height and weight, not for height, but for weight. So he used to get knocked over all the time when he was little.
Mm.
When you were in those kind of locker room atmospheres with essentially young men, what was the thought process behind fitting in? I mean, not only physically, which we've alluded to the fact that you didn't really do that well,
Mhm.
but then also emotionally and mentally, because you were kind of incredibly outside of your comfort zone.
Yeah, and it was funny because when I first got there and we were in the locker rooms, everybody just started undressing and they would shower together. So that was such a big change than what I was used to. It was funny to me though. And then just being so much younger than everybody, it was a little different, but I think most of them were nice to me. I mean, obviously some of them were competing against me, so they might not have talked to me and stuff, but I think for the most part, I got along with most of them. Other than the language, it was hard to talk with some of them.
How did your coaches work with you because you were kind of an outsider to their club?
Yeah, I think the coach also liked me. So he tried to help me and he tried to speak English sometimes, but he would just show me and explain it over for me so I could see for every drill we did and every part of the session so I would know what to do.
And then this is kind of a question for both of you. How do you think that the soccer landscape in America has shifted over the past decade?
I think there's much more interest in soccer today than there was 10 years ago. There was one post I'd read on Nielsen ratings or something that I believe said that soccer has increased by 27% as far as interest in it and playing in it since I think it was 2013. So just much more interest, much more focus on it. I think as more people begin playing, even as we get a larger immigrant population, I think we're getting more people who play soccer here. And now with the World Cup coming in 2026, I think there'll be definitely increased focus on soccer here in the US.
I think more people are starting to also watch like Champions League and World Cup, of course. So they're actually enjoying it too, not just playing.
And I think our women's team being so strong has certainly been, helped with this. So many people have focused that the US excelled with the women's soccer.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the US is not known to be a soccer powerhouse in the world. So that's why I was really excited to talk to you guys about the difference in how soccer is approached here versus overseas. I mean, what do you think the biggest shift is between the landscape over here and over in those countries?
The biggest I've noticed is how passionate everybody in the other countries are. Even for youth games, the parents and anybody watching in the crowd, they'll get so excited and just cheer and scream. It's crazy how, I mean, they just get so crazy. Compared to here, they just don't care as much, maybe, unless it's one of the sports like football or basketball that they like more.
Even the semi-pro games, if you go, I'd attended a couple, again, just semi-pro level in Italy, and you had the crowds were cheering, they were standing and singing songs, and it wasn't just, this drunken group of people that were being loud. They just absolutely loved the game. And one thing I found was interesting was they celebrated the movement of the ball. And like in the US, even when we played, when we refer to DA, that's the United States Developmental Academy, it used to be the top tier for training for young boys here in the US. Now the names have changed, but even there, the parents were oftentimes very focused on the scores and the teams. It's like, what was the score? I'd hear parents complain that, you have a soccer game and at the end of it, it's 1-0, not a large score at all compared to basketball or other games. And that's hard for Americans sometimes to understand. But in what I saw in Italy, when I went there, was that they seemed to celebrate the way the ball is moved and passed. So you would have the crowd cheering, this pass or dribble down the side, or just the maneuvering of the ball itself. The creativity was kind of celebrated in a way that it's not as much celebrated here. And I do think that's changing. I think people are beginning to recognize the beauty of the movement or the thought process or the geometry of the passes, even, if you will. If you're passing, breaking the lines or just a straight pass down, I don't think that was either understood as well previously, or for whatever reason, it wasn't acknowledged as much or something that was promoted.
How do you think that Americans make soccer a powerhouse sport in this country?
I think it's going to be difficult to do just because of, I know one of the things Jared brought up was that it's so hard to find somebody to play with here. You've got to call somebody, you've got to, text, you got to find a field that's open, or, a park, get people together, go drive someplace.
It's just that in Italy and other countries in Europe, everybody plays just for fun whenever they have free time. So they just get together with friends and can play anywhere, even in the streets. But over here, you have to drive and there's other sports, so it's not all focused on just soccer.
And I think from a young age, kids are immersed in it there. And you have pickup games, like Jared would say he would be jogging for exercise, he'd be jogging down by the beach and you'd see people just playing or kicking a ball. Or if you just, one thing that struck me when I had gone with him to Assisi when he was 15, we were walking through the plaza at, maybe 11:30 at night, late at night, but it's a very safe area. And he had his ball that he was dribbling, and people would make comments about the ball. A couple of times he'd pass it, or they'd, ask for the ball. So asking this little kid just, walking down the street to pass the ball to them, and they'd pass it back and forth. So just, I don't know if they were friendlier or more open to interaction, but it almost seemed like having the soccer ball was an invitation to a conversation or to, some sort of interaction. And I don't think you get that here.
Yeah. I've talked to a couple athletes of various sports from not the United States. And I just think I like hearing the difference in atmosphere that comes along with playing sport. Like, sport is such an international language that it's cool to have that experience overseas and see how different it is from what you've already experienced in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there is a lot of interest for a company like you have, Teesta, that's trying to connect young athletes with those overseas opportunities. And
I think you're right. We were, initially we were surprised at how difficult it was to find out about training opportunities abroad. We kind of stumbled, into the program that Jared had initially joined. But when we wanted to explore whether there were other opportunities or places where he might have an easier time, training, there's just so much we learned that most Americans don't know. Like there's the FIFA regulations. They have a Protection of Minors Act that's designed, a few years ago to protect young players who went over to the European countries, because there were several African young players who were being brought over and kind of absorbed by these clubs or academies. But after a period of a couple of years, if their play didn't continue to improve and they weren't at the same standard, the academy would drop them, and some of these young men would have no way of getting back home. So the country was kind of having to support them. So some of these protections were designed to protect these minors, anybody under 18. But what it's done also is make it very difficult for a young player to go and train in some of these countries, because you can't join an academy unless you're an EU player. There's certain exceptions. One exception is if you're a student. And that's the exception that most of these academies use to kind of bring players over, because they'll have a school component. Oftentimes it's only a language class. You just need the language school, and that's enough, that's sufficient to meet that requirement. But when you have that language school in place, like in Spain, you need 20 hours a week, a Spanish class, or whatever the other, schooling is going to be. So you're there under a student visa. You're not there as a, a sports visa. You're there as a student, but in addition to that, you're allowed to have this training. So there are ways that people have kind of maneuvered the system to allow these youngsters to go over and play and train, which is good. So there are still opportunities there you can go, but it's not as if anybody can just go and join an academy. It's very restrictive depending on what your nationality is and a few other things.
How does a youth player get those opportunities to even get on the radar of an international club coach?
I think getting on the radar of an international club coach is, again, depending on the level, is going to be very difficult. One reason Jared was able to get on the semi-pro team in Spain was because he was already in Spain and an academy. So he was able to go for a trial. I think it made sense for them since he was already more or less local. Some of the people I've spoken to have been hesitant to just bring Americans over, because you can judge a certain amount by a highlight reel or speaking, but they really want to see the player train or play. And it's difficult to do that just through video. And not everybody has the means of just sending somebody over, to pay to go and spend a week there and play and see how they fit in. One thing, there are several companies in the US that are already creating these combines that are similar to what, like football, American football does for, American football players, and there's some companies here that currently will bring coaches over and allow them to assess players in game situations and training situations, and then perhaps give them an invite. We had Jared participate in one combine this past June, and it was really a neat experience. He was with a lot of young men. I think you were one of the youngest, but not the youngest there. There were a number of people from all over the world. There were a few we spoke with who were from Africa. There was one young man from Nigeria, which surprised me, several from South America. And we attended a combine in Orlando, Florida. And at the end of it, they invited a group of people. I believe from a few of the combines they held, they invited a group of people to form a team that were invited to go to Finland and play in front of a few teams. We had the invitation. We opted not to go that route, but it did make us think about how these combines could be improved. And one of the things that, my husband's a businessman, so I'm kind of pulling him into GoSoccerPro now to try and build it more as a business. And we've had a number of groups and organizations from abroad reach out to us to try and do various types of joint ventures. And one of them that we have been in talks with is talking about having combine events in conjunction with us over here at the US. But what we're wanting to do is, say we had 100 boys or girls playing. At the end of that, or at the end of the sessions, we would create a team that we would sponsor to actually go over to one of the smaller countries. And we're looking specifically at Austria, or Slovenia was one of the ones we were speaking about. Some of the smaller countries that are close to each other, we would pay for this group of young men or young women to go over as a team. They would have to pay for their travel. But once they were there, we would cover all expenses for room, board. They would get 3 or 4 games. They would be in front of real coaches and have an opportunity to sign. To be on this select group of, this team, you would have to excel at the combine. And for the combine, we're wanting to have between 12 and 15 coaches from some of these smaller teams or clubs actually there. The combine that Jared participated in, we were hoping that we'd have coaches present or scouts, but it's also time of COVID. So we weren't able to have any of the European, people over watching. Basically, the gentlemen who were running the combine, I think they collected their thoughts and made reviews. We received a review on Jared along with his invitation. And I think they determined that way who they felt could move forward or who maybe wasn't quite ready to move forward. So we're wanting to do it a little bit differently. And I'm very excited about that. We're hoping to have our first event in June. And I hope that we'll get, college students as well as college graduates and hopefully people from all over coming and attending this. So I'm very excited about the opportunity. I think, people think of European soccer and they immediately think of Italy or Spain or UK. And those are such large powerhouses and there's so much talent there already that it's very difficult to break in. But they also are several smaller countries, Lithuania, Turkey, Austria. And if you can get into a higher level of soccer there, you're on the same stage. You're playing for many of the same championship games, but you're competing against a smaller group of people, which in turn makes your opportunities better or your chance of being seen and then perhaps moving on better.
Wow, that's such an interesting niche.
It is,
What?
and it's exciting.
Yeah, it is. Jared, do you see yourself living in Slovenia or Turkey?
I mean, I definitely could if it's one of the top level clubs there, because even though it's like a smaller country, you can break into the bigger leagues from there when you get experience or game time with some of those clubs. And also some of them playing like Champions Leagues and all the same championships, which is great, just experience and a way to break in that way too.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there are so many different ways to break into international soccer. Which do you think is the quote unquote easiest way?
Being European, having some dual citizenship, I think is the easiest. And that's interesting too. One of the, I write a blog, and one of the articles that I'm working on or trying to research right now is talking about how there's now citizenship by descent is growing. I think in maybe 2013, Lithuania decided, or Bohemia decided that if your great grandparent was a citizen, you would be able to get citizenship. I think in Bohemia, which is now the Czech Republic, it's also great grandparents. So I'm trying to write an article letting people know that if in your family tree within, great grandparents, within a couple generations, if you had a European ancestor, there may be a vehicle through which you'll be able to obtain dual citizenship. And if you have that, it makes it so much easier because many of these countries, limit how many foreigners can play on their teams. So they're very selective about who they see or who can play. And some of these foreigners have, dual citizenship, and that's how they've been able to get there at all.
Wow, that's an awesome loophole.
It is. It's going to be interesting to explore, and I think it's growing more and more. Just the last couple, years, the countries are allowing this. So definitely something that needs to be looked into.
Yeah, I would love to hear more, like once you figure out the small minuscule details of that ruling, I would love to hear more about that.
I'll send you
But
the post.
yeah, but for right now, Teesta, can you kind of walk me through how you got started with GoSoccerPro and what the company does right now?
After Jared went to Italy, I was just surprised at how many people began asking us about his experience. I had started a small blog that was intended to be a journal of his experience that was only for, my sister-in-law, my, grandparents, just immediate family. And we began having people who had been on his team, and then other people. I had a few people start reaching out to me who I didn't even know, saying, we, heard your kid went over to Italy. What, how did you do that? And so I started a bigger blog that I opened up. I, stopped keeping it so private. And over time, I just, I recognized about a year ago that organically I was getting about 3,000 hits on my site. And that was without doing any advertising. It was just posting whenever I posted. It's become a hobby at that point for me. And decided there really is a need out there. There are a lot of parents who want to know what opportunities are available. There are a lot of players who would like to explore if there's a path that's viable for playing in Europe or in other countries. What can they do? And one thing I recognized also was that in all our research, it took a lot of time. We've spent hundreds of hours scouring through Google, looking for these obscure articles or trying to make connections to speak to people to find out, what area is safe, what area is not safe. Now, what COVID testing do you need before flying? There's so many little things, even obtaining visas. It can be very difficult to go through the steps of obtaining a visa. There's so many little details that you have to put together. The first time we did our visa application for Jared, I think it came back 3 times because there was that much more additional information they wanted. I thought I was specifically answering all their questions, but they had very, very specific requirements and I wasn't quite meeting, some of those. So there's a lot to learn as you kind of traverse this path, and we realize that it's not easily obtainable. So I wanted to create a site where everything, all the information could be gathered in one place. So what I'm hoping to create, or what I'm trying to create out of GoSoccerPro, is a one-stop shop where if a parent or a child is interested in learning how you can train abroad or possibly play abroad, you can go there, search through my articles, search through the information. I have a question and answer section talking about how to obtain a visa, how to get the passport, the rules for minors abroad, links to FIFA regulations. There's a great deal of information that's all been kind of collected and placed in one space. So it'll be more easy to navigate and kind of get the information that you need so you can determine whether it is an option that you want to explore that might be a good fit for you as a player or for your family.
Wow, that's really cool. Can you talk about also the growth of the company that you've seen? I know now that you've chosen to spend more conscious time working on this project, talk about the growth of the company and also where you want it to be.
I'm wanting this to be the main stop where people go when they have questions about how to play abroad or how to train abroad. I would love to be able to vet every one of the academies or camps or tours I have listed. I have not been able to do that. It's amazed me how many people have been reaching out to me from these companies wanting us to just place ads for them. And we've been very hesitant to do so, largely because if I don't know you, I'm not going to say your program is phenomenal. I had a conversation with a gentleman from a small country yesterday who was talking about how they were placing all these players in the top league in India from the small European country, which just seemed, and I'm of Indian descent. I'm actually an immigrant, but it was just a bizarre concept to me to think about somebody going to the ISL and playing in India. When I spoke with him at greater length, I found out that this is the first year his company's been in existence. He's only had 3 players run through it. But to listen to him initially, it sounds like he's got this phenomenal group and this wonderful training. I mean, nice gentleman. I think he's got a great plan in mind. He's got an interesting vehicle he's trying to create through which to get to top level play at another country, but it's not been tested. It's not really been, tried. And as we spoke to them, there were a lot of things that just didn't seem, I think in America, we're spoiled in a lot of ways. Our living conditions are much more comfortable than many places around the world. And I don't think every European who wants to open an academy is capable of doing one that's going to be able to sustain Americans. And I don't even mean I'm not saying you have to have like all the luxury around you. I mean, Jared, as he mentioned, had to do his own laundry. There was no heating in the one, building. The one place in Spain had no air conditioning, so they had the windows open for cooling. They were, more, you make accommodations, but I think you have to have a certain level. And I'm completely rambling, Julie. I wish I'd written this out and then I could have answered you better. I just think there needs to be a way to vet some of these. So one struggle I'm having right now is I want to give the information for any academy I can find so parents can talk to them and explore whether or not it might be a good fit. Because maybe there's an academy in a small country that I wouldn't feel comfortable with, but somebody has, an aunt who lives down the street. They may have a connection that makes them feel more comfortable with the child being in a smaller country that I might not be comfortable with for my child. I mean, you never know. So I want to make, what I'm doing now is I have a number of academies and camps and tour groups listed. I haven't spoken to all the people at each of these. What I am starting to do now is have some conversations with these people. And what I've told them, I've had 7 or 8 academies have reached out to us wanting me to promote them exclusively. And I do not want to do that. I've told them that if I have a conversation with you, I don't mind writing that up. If I have an opportunity to go visit their facilities or see their place, I can write something a little bit more in detail about our thoughts. I've written articles on the 2 programs Jared was a part of, but I'm not going to say something to promote a group that I haven't visited or I don't know personally. I mean, as a parent, I wouldn't want to rely on, somebody doing that. So I want to make it as, I wanted to make it as easy as possible to get information on my site, but I don't want to create the illusion that everything on there is vetted when it comes to contacts for the academies or camps.
So what goes into vetting a camp? I mean, what are you looking for?
The ones that we're vetting that I need to write more articles for are the ones that I've met with the people personally. Either Jared has participated personally, or in one instance, there's another young man who we know well, who I know the parents, and if they've gone and they can give me, personal recommendations or some personal experiences, what the people were like. At this point, there are very few that I have vetted on my site, and that hasn't been my goal. I'm not trying to connect people with academies, only because I don't feel comfortable doing that as a parent. What I'm trying to do is connect people with the information and with the questions they should be asking, things that perhaps they haven't even thought about asking. What do you need to know before you send your child someplace? What should you be thinking of? What considerations might you not have thought of? Because it may seem like it's very simple to just send your child there to boarding school, but a boarding school in another country may be very different than a boarding school atmosphere here.
And then the last question I have to ask is, what have you seen Jared go through that makes you the most proud to watch him succeed in attempting to capture his dream?
I love that he's been so willing to sacrifice so much. I mean, for us, it's been a huge sacrifice not having him here. He's had to, we want him here. This is my mama's boy, so I want him home with me. But I'm very proud of him that he has gone and, he's missed birthdays, he's missed holidays, he's missed family celebrations. We've tried to fit in as much on summer vacations and Christmases as possible to have him still involved with everything. One year we had 3 of them were in high school, so we pulled him back and kept him home so all 3 could be at the same high school. And that may have been selfish on my husband and my part, but we wanted that experience as a family of having the 3 of them together. I am very proud of him that he's willing to give up so much, and that he has sacrificed a great deal. He's sacrificed a lot of fun events with friends or going out or doing things, all because he's been wanting to train. And I know he's doing what he loves, but I'm very proud of him that he has the passion and that he has the drive to actually fulfill that passion, to chase it. I mean, he goes wholeheartedly into this. He puts his all into it, and I love that about him. And it makes us, as parents, you want to support your kids to do whatever they want. You want them to do what they love and to be successful at it. So we want to do whatever we can to help him achieve his dream. And I'm proud of everything he's put towards it himself.
That was the sweetest answer.
Oh.
Is there anything else as we conclude that you think that I missed about either Jared, your story, or Teesta, your business, or your role in Jared's success? I mean, is there anything else that you would like to talk about before we conclude this interview?
I don't feel like we've had much of a role in his success. We've been able to help him get some opportunities to be places, but I think that's one thing that can also be difficult for American parents sometimes. I've had a few parents have phoned me and asked, told me that they can pay whatever, where can I get them to a top club? And I don't have the ability to do that. I wouldn't even know how to start. I can't do that for my child. I certainly don't know how to do that for somebody else. At some point, it depends on the child and how much talent they have. And then beyond the talent, how hard they're willing to work for the talent, with the talent they have. And there's so many obstacles. Somebody can get injured. There's so many things that can bar you from attaining that dream. I'm rambling again. I think it's very important that you have a plan B or a plan C. In our case, what has been frustrating at times for Michael and I was that Jared's plan A, B, and C were all play professional soccer, play professional soccer, play professional soccer. He has no desire at this time to pursue a college degree, even though he's got the brains, he's got the grades. We've decided he can pursue the soccer and he can take college classes as he wants, or, on the side or part-time, and still, get both. So we want to do whatever we can to help him. And I don't even remember what your initial question was, Jill. I'm sorry, but I can't help anybody make that dream. Hopefully what I can do is help them identify a better pathway or more clear pathway that they may be able to take the steps to make the dream for themselves. And along the way, if they get a phenomenal life experience abroad, then that's wonderful, because I think there's a lot to be said for living abroad, experiencing other cultures. I think the world is becoming more of a global community. There's that one book, The World is Flat, Thomas someone or the other. I mean, everybody interacts more now. And the more you can learn about other cultures and other people, I think the richer your life becomes. I just think if you have the ability to make that experience for your child, be it a short-term camp or tour, or a longer period of time, a gap year, whatever it is, I think that's just an incredible gift you can give your child, to allow them to live someplace else and see how other people live.
Yeah, I mean, when I asked that question initially, I think I said help them, but what I really meant was, how do you facilitate the opportunities for them to succeed? And I think that even though that was simply semantics, I think it does make a difference, because you're not out on the pitch with him,
Right.
like you're not in the locker rooms with him,
Right.
but you are helping him along the way. And that's equally as important as him following through.
Well, I think you can try and get the tools. And one of the things I'm trying to build on GoSoccerPro now is a network of mental health experts. I've had a few interviews with some sports psychologists. There were certainly the couple people that Jared had spoken with. We had purchased one program for him to go through that talked about, being in the moment. I don't know if you watch Ted Lasso at all, the Apple TV show, but he talks about how you've got to be like a goldfish. Your memory needs to be 10 seconds long. And I think that's so true. That's it's so difficult to learn how to focus and at the same time let go. You've got to be in the moment of play. You can be planning what you're going to be doing to a degree, but you can't focus at all or waste any time worrying about what went on before. You've got to be moving forward. And it's difficult for adults to grasp that or learn how to do it. Forget, young kids or young players. But I think the best thing we can do is just support our child. Everybody knows, any parent knows their child better than anybody else. I've got 3 kids, all raised the same, and they have completely different personalities. They respond differently to different, the way I motivate them is different for each of them. So your child, what motivates them, what they want. Sometimes what they need better than they may know. And if they have a dream, you just want to help them attain it, and or do whatever you can to support them. And at least we don't want him to ever feel like, what if I was able to go there? Maybe I could have done this. Had we not sent him to Italy, I don't think he ever would have played semi-pro. In Italy, it just wouldn't have happened had he not built up to this. And I would hate for him to ever think I could have done something except for, my mom didn't let me, whatever it was. So if there's something we can do to try and help him make a dream, attain a dream, then we want to help provide him the support. And then it's up to him, because he either has a skill or he doesn't. He has the talent, he has the drive, or he doesn't. And if he doesn't, and he reaches his, whatever the top is, and that's it. But at least he won't look back and think that I could have, but for something.
Yeah. And just before we go, is there anything else that you guys want to talk about, want to make clearer than it already has been? This is normally the part in the interview where I open the floor to just random thoughts that we have not already discussed.
One thing I struggle with is, and as a parent and as a business owner, is that I can't help everybody, because I've had so many players reach out from other countries and the US asking me for help placing them places, and I don't have the ability to do that. It bothers me that we still have a pay-for-play system in place here in the US. And unfortunately, many of the players who do play top-level soccer here are those who have the parents who are able to afford for them to be with those clubs, or perhaps to get the additional training or the additional opportunities. And that is a shame. And I know some clubs have scholarships, but I can think of a couple of young men that were on one of Jared's teams who, when he came back for high school, who had to drop out of the clubs, and they were receiving scholarships, but they had to drop out of the club because they had to help their parents. One of them had to get a part-time job so he could earn money to help his mom with rent. And, it's one thing to give money to somebody to help them with a scholarship to play, but, it's very humbling to recognize how much talent is there that we aren't able to support. And again, I'm rambling. One of the things I hope to do with this combine, when we do have it created, we are going to have a charge for participating in the combine. And I want to make that, the same as most of the other combines. Most of them run $450 to $500. We won't be able to take that charge away. But I do very much want to have it set up where we can have the players, when they are in the other country, they may have to pay to go there, and we can help hopefully with some lower rates for getting over there for the travel. But I want to have the experience once they are abroad to be covered. I want their room and board and the trials and any games with local clubs, food. I want all of that to be covered.
I think that would be amazing.
I think
That
it
would be so amazing.
We're in discussions with a few sponsors now. We'll see what happens. I really hope we're able to do that, even if it's a small group of 15, 16 players. I think it'd be a phenomenal experience for the boys.
Yeah.
And possibly a ticket into a different life. We'll see. Because we do have talent here. We have a lot of talent here in the US, and there's just a lot of talent all over the world, and a lot of young people with the dream who have the ability, who just need the chance. So we'll see what we can do. Hopefully we can help a few.
That's awesome. Jared, is there anything else that you wanted to say that we have not already covered? Any stories that you would like to share that we have not already?
Yeah, I have a lot of stories just from being in another country, but I can't really think of anything specifically with soccer or anything really. I don't know.
It's got stories all the time, but hard when you're put on the spot to think of one, I guess.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What is the most amazing memory that you have of playing overseas?
I think it would be probably just a tournament when I was in Spain, and our team won, so that was obviously a great feeling for me. And just playing against such good competition there, and then just learning so much from them too. It's really good because obviously I want to become stronger and better. So any way I can do that to help me get better is makes me really happy.
And then this episode should be coming out on December.
I hope you're gonna cut some, do cut and pasting.
Yeah, I do.
Good, thank you.
This episode will come out on the 22nd. So once it comes out, I will get back to you guys. It will come out, and then I will put it up on social media. So it'll go, clips of it will go up on Instagram, Twitter, and then the entirety of our interview will go up on YouTube. And then the podcast will be out on Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud.
No, wonderful. Can you send me those links or list of them? And when you get the clips, if you send them to me, I'll put it out on my Instagram and my social media.
Can I get you guys' socials? Preferably Instagram.
Yeah.
He is.
My Instagram is JSS Snow. So it's 3 S's, but
Okay.
or just Jared Sullivan should come.
Does
up.
it come up, Jared Sullivan? Do you do TikTok at all?
I love TikTok, but I don't produce content on there.
Okay.
So that is
I've been exploring it. I don't know.
Yeah, I love TikTok a little too much, and I actually had to delete my personal account because I was spending too much time on it. But that's a different story.
Addictive.
It's such a good app. It's such a good app that it's actually an issue.
Well, it's funny though, because and my husband was laughing at me because for a while I started having all these really obese people and goats, because all these people I was coming across, you know how they initially show you whatever? I would feel like I had to encourage these people who'd lost like 100 pounds or were trying to. But the more I would hit like or great job or write something encouraging, the more content I was getting.
Right.
My feed was all these morbidly or obese people and goats, because there were some fainting goats that I thought were really funny. And then I started getting more and more. I mean, it was ridiculous.
You were on Goat Talk.
And I'm not even a huge goat fan. Just there were some of the goats were cute and they were